And welcome to Dice Jesters. My name is Julie.
And my name is Dave.
And today, Dave and I dive down in a submarine, right? Here we go.
Yeah. Into the deep.
Into the deep.
Blue.
To explore Aquasphere, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So Aquasphere is our fourth game in our 10x10 for Season 3. And Season 3 so far has been quite the journey. We've been taking our time with completing the games. In prior seasons, we just kind of, I don't know, finished them out on one night. Is that the correct terminology? I don't know.
It was like our goal to get through a 10x10 challenge within 10 weeks. And
yeah.
that was...
That's what it felt like, at least.
It was tough.
And we were given some feedback from my friend, who you can actually listen to that episode. That is, I believe it's called...
An Evening
with Bearwin Plays Games. He kind of was like, oh, maybe you should let it last a little bit longer. And so that's what we've been doing this time. And I feel like we have been able to give better insight and build a better strategy for ourselves as well, because last season for 5 tribes, I just demolished Dave.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't go back and think of a strategy. He just was continuously doing the same thing. I was doing the same thing. But this way, the playing field's a little bit better. So who might come on top this season might be a little different compared to previous seasons.
And I think it's one thing, like, I get really excited sometimes about playing a game and I want to play it again and again and again, back to back, but it's okay to let it breathe a little bit, you know, like a good fine wine. You want to let it take some time in between. And I've found that when I come back to a game after not having played it for like a day or two, that my perspective is a little bit different than if I were just to play it all the way through back to back 10 times. And we've also played some palate cleansers, like when we played First Wrath. That was a lot of fun. In between, we might play a game a few times, play something else, come back to it. So it's been working. So thank you, Mike, for that feedback.
Yeah, because that's what I needed for Cooper's Island.
Yeah.
When we had played that, to really let it sit. And then after letting it sit, that's when I came to the conclusion for that episode. So
right, that it was
it out from there.
A decent game, but not quite our style that we really love.
Yeah, that's okay. And if you have enjoyed our journey so far, we are on Patreon. Our Patreon does have podcast episodes that aren't particularly released to the public. They're more so for our Patreon members, and they give a more deep dive into mine and Dave's personal life. So kind of like why we decided to go with Dice Jesters, a little about Lupin, and what have you.
If you find that fascinating.
If you find that fascinating, indeed. Maybe there's some videos of me juggling. Who knows?
Maybe.
But,
or maybe me hitting my face in the ball with Dragon Balls. Do we
I'm
have that
allowed
one
to
there?
post that?
We should do it.
We should.
You know what? If you want to see a hilariously embarrassing video of myself, you had these juggling balls, and I was like, I could do that. And they're attached to a string. And I went and he took a video, and it just like came around, and my glasses, I think, flew off.
They did fly off. You hit yourself in the face. And then at the end, I was just like, oh, I could do that. Yeah. We were like, oh, this is easy. And I was just like, okay, you do it.
That's funny.
But yeah, feel free to join us there. We would love to have you for some more like gesture magical fun. Yeah. And going in to Aquasphere, my first impressions, because we're staring at it right now.
We have it set up, ready to go. It's like...
How long did this take you to set up? Because this looks...
It took a minute. It wasn't bad. It was more of like setting up a game for the first time. It's almost like that's the best way for me to learn the rules too, because I can read through the rules, but I'm a very hands-on kind of learner. So as I'm going through learning how to set up the game, I'm learning individually what each pieces are and what they do and everything. And so I really took my time just setting it up and soaking in, using another water pun there. The
water pun.
The rules of this game, which seem kind of intuitive to me based on the games that we've played. So I'll be curious to talk about what it looks like in front of us right now set up. What are your first thoughts? How is this making you feel looking at this beautifully colored board?
It kind of reminds me of the game. It's like an app. I think it's called Imposter or something like that, where you're an imposter or person. I don't know. You're something. But you're working with a whole bunch of other people, and you have to figure out who the imposter is, but you're all required to, like, do some tasks. The imposter's making you, like, break some of the items, and you have to figure it out before you're left alone with them, I think. I've never played the game. Wow. I've just seen it played, and that's kind of what intense. This is like. So, yeah. What other thoughts? Well, before walking into the room to look at the game, you had walked in and you were like, oh, at this angle, it looks like a crop circle.
It does.
And I see it. I see the crop circle.
I was wondering why the board design was so enticing to me. Something about the geometric pattern of it just feels so satisfying. What is it about it? Name. It looks like a crop circle. So maybe this is about, I think it's quite about aliens, but you know.
These little pieces look like squids. And then these look like octopi, these purple ones. So I'm guessing you need the squid to then attack the octopi.
Or feed
because you don't want the octopi to be out of what looks like their cage. Because they mess up things. In probably a submarine, this is, yeah?
Submarine, yeah.
Yeah, and then you want to fill the vessel before the end of the game here. Because if the game ends and the vessels aren't filled, you can't deploy your people or your submarines out into the ocean.
Or escape.
Oh, we're escaping.
No, not necessarily.
Oh. And then over here we have a separate board that kind of reminds me of the game. Do you remember the old Nintendo game? Burgerville or Burger Time, where you're the chef and you walk down like a ladder and then you try to like collect all the burger pieces before something comes and gets you?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what this looks like. So this thing reminds me of in Arnak, so I'm guessing you move up this and you gain something. So you can go up, right, or left, depending which one you go up. You gain this like disco ball squid, or this like settings wheel, or you get, I don't know, to get rid of an octopus, or you get to deploy a submarine, coal, time, and whatever this green windshield thing is.
Well, that's an interesting take on the game. Do you want me to tell you where you were wrong, where you were right? I love this stage of trying to guess what the game is about, just having it on the table. But these aren't squid; these are actually bots.
These are bots.
Robots, yeah. You were right about. They're called octopods in the game. I don't really know the distinction. Octopods, octopi. Why are they pods? Because they can walk. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. Maybe. So we have this. This is like our main area. This is our Aquasphere. That we're basically a team of scientists and engineers and robots tasked with going down and researching these crystals, these mysterious crystals, to see what their powers are. So this is a Stefan Feld game, and you and I have played quite a few of them at this point. We've played Castle of Burgundy, Bruges, Notre Dame, In the Year of the Dragon, Bonfire. So this is our sixth one. You and I have played together. I've played other ones than that. I love, Stefan Feld is my favorite game designer, and this is one I have wanted to play for a long time. So this came out in 2014, so I remember when it was still pretty new. And this is one I think has really flown under the radar, or didn't gain as much popularity as some of his other designs like Castles of Burgundy. And I think that this, just looking at it and reading the rules, I think that we're really going to like this one. What I love about Stefan Feld is he can manage to always have some kind of really unique feeling action selection system in his games, and then have a good blend of tactical decisions within a longer strategy that you try to build. And also with a good amount of player interaction, not always super direct, but just enough where you have to really pay attention to what your opponent's doing. They can catch you off guard if you're not watching them. And I love that in the game. In this one, we have this really unique programming system where we have to program future actions with our bots. And we do that by this board over here, the separate board you were mentioning. It has these different sections that you'll move your engineer up. Mm-hmm. So that is determining what action you'll be able to program. So it has different arrows and tracks that you can move up. So maybe you move your scientist up here to get the gear, and then you can cross over to the other one to get the octopus action, which I'll go through those when I teach you the game. But basically, on your turn, you can do one of two things. You can either program a bot by moving your engineer up this track, or you can use the action of a bot that you've already programmed. You also have the scientist over here in the Aquasphere who can either stay where they're at and use that action for that section. Every one of these spheres is identical, but they might have different types of resources. Or you can move your scientist to an adjacent sphere and pay the time cost to move and then execute the action in that sphere. So the different things let you do things like deploy a submarine to a section. It lets you gain these research cards, or you can expand your lab. So that's what this separate one is. That then lets you hold a greater amount of resources. Like any Stefan Feld game, there's a number of ways that you can score points, like through your lab, through deploying submarines, through getting rid of octopods. And then there's like majority things, like whoever has the most bots in the control center of each one gets points at the end of the round. There's this really tactical nature of the game of trying to optimize your moves. But I know he wanted it in this one to make it feel very restrictive. And I know that you love restrictive games. And he thought, from my understanding, that this setting and this underwater research station would be perfect for that, because you think you're isolated, resources are tight, there's not a lot that you can do, and we're all stuck down here together, so there might be some bumping into each other and trying to become the best scientists. So that's kind of, in short, what we're doing in this game.
So are these octopods going to be your rats?
Maybe. Because you get points for removing them, and then you get subtracted points at the end of each round for octopods that are in the sphere where your scientist is located.
Oh, so you can just move spheres.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not very fair. My first sphere is 2.
But this one over here is 1.
Oh, you don't have to move clockwise?
Nope, you can move anywhere that you can move to, left or right.
Yeah, but this one has 3. You have to surround... Look at you. You have this one where it has nothing in there, and this one has 2.
There's a randomized setup, okay?
It was randomized, huh? Seems pretty convenient to me.
But you know what, Julie? There was
Yes.
I think that there's one of these research cards that make it so when you are crossing a section that would require 2, that you don't have to pay anything. So there's ways to offset that.
Oh, so what you're saying is I have to collect something to be able to pass this area here.
Well, you start with 4 time, and then you'll see that you have this nice stack of time
this
here.
Is my time?
If you use the action to collect the time, which you are starting on that action spot right there.
Are you starting on that action spot?
No, I'm starting on the submarine one. It's based off of the sphere where you started. There's this program a bot action right here, and there's the color that's right above that the disco bot, the disco squid that you called it.
The disco
squid. There's like a lot of randomization to this setup too. So
okay. As long as you say it's random. I'm going to watch you next time we play our second game for this. Like, after the first round, when we reset it up, I'm going to say, okay, it's random, right? Does this come with a theatrical beginning of some sorts?
Oh, the whole backstory?
Yes.
Of course. Are you ready?
Yes.
Welcome to the research team on the mission to Aquasphere, an underwater research station. Your task is to recover and analyze a novel kind of crystal, as well as to conduct further research. You have been granted a limited amount of time in the station. In order to succeed on your mission, you will be provided access to the latest models of research bots. Program these bots according to the task at hand and use them efficiently in the various sectors of the station. You will be assigned a lab with basic equipment. If the available capacities do not suffice, feel free to expand your lab. Keep in mind, your team is not the only one present. If you don't recover more crystals, place more bots in the station, and gather more data than your competitors, your research contract may not be extended. Finally, some advice. Your presence will attract octopods, which may break into the station. Remove them promptly, otherwise they may interfere with your bots and obstruct operations. Good luck. Did that get you pumped up? Is your adrenaline going right now?
No, I wouldn't say my adrenaline's pretty plateaued.
Mine is up there. Oh, one other cool thing I wanted to mention that I haven't seen in a game before.
Yes.
But in this research station, you notice that it has a score track around the outside, which is pretty standard for a game. But when you get to these red lines that you see here, you actually have to get rid of a crystal in order to continue moving past it. So you might be stuck at like 11 points and do something to get points until you get a crystal to pay in order to... Isn't that cool? Like, hey,
isn't that cool? You're like, isn't it cool to lose a resource?
You were saying that you like restrictions in games. Well, here's a restriction to actually gaining points. Oh man, I can't wait.
I have a feeling that you're gonna get stuck.
Focusing on the wrong things.
Laugh. Yeah, I'm gonna be like, haha.
Like I got 4 octopods, and that's gonna get me 10 points or whatever it gives.
And you're like, but how am I gonna get 10 points when I don't have one of these special omnolite whatever?
In order to get the crystals, I need time to move over to this one where the crystal is, and then program my bot. I can see it right now.
Okay, I mean, without you even explaining it, I think I already have my strategy down.
That's so Julie.
That's so
my god.
I'm surprised Lupin hasn't come in with all this like fish talk, like Aquasphere or diving under the water, submarines.
I did mention aliens too, and that word angers him.
It does very so angry.
I almost feel like I've explained this game enough at this point. I may not even really have to explain much else to get started. What do you think?
Maybe not. Yeah, I don't know.
Pretty straightforward.
Let's dive right in. Wait, let's
dive.
Deep dive. I don't know. I already used.
We're gonna go underwater.
Yeah. Let's snorkel in. Okay, let's jump right in. Yeah, there we go. And we are back after our first round of Aquasphere, and yeah, I would say you're right, Dave. It was on the easier side to learn, and I think it's because we have played a lot of like Stefan Feld games. Well, I don't know if it's a lot. I don't know how many games he has, so I don't know.
He has a lot.
He has a lot?
Yeah.
Okay, we've
still a lot to show you.
We played like, a little over 5, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so it follows a lot of his game structure. It has like that kind of worker placement in a way where you choose what to do with the bot, and then you move the bot a certain way, and then you need it on there to activate that action within the room of the Aquasphere. So it was pretty easy for me to catch on to this, I would say. The thing that caught me off guard is once you're done, you're done. Even if you have time or crystals, you can't use the crystals to potentially get more of the bots to continuously go around. You can only spend 3 time for a bot per round, and then you can't use a crystal, and then you're done. You're done. You have to say you're done.
At some point, the journey has to end.
I know, and I'm usually like, no, let me maximize everything I can do, and I felt like I wasn't maximizing items, and then I guess I didn't realize that you could earn the center of the room to get the majority of the Aquasphere to get more points.
I love majority, like area control. That's the terminology for that. But
area control. Well, area control. So I didn't realize that you could just really push the other person out of the way, and after you get pushed out, that person has to bring the bot back into their, I don't know what to call it, their like screen, and so it subtracts points because the more bots you use, the more points you can have if you have submarines on the map. So it's kind of like
it's a balance.
It goes hand in hand. Yeah. And I was a bit shocked you weren't distracted by octopods.
I wanted to be.
I know.
You see, I got the lab expansion that let me have more octopods because I was like, oh, I'll wait. But then you kind of have to wait until a space builds up with octopods to be able to capitalize on that.
Yeah, and they aren't like the rats because they really don't overtake the submarine or the Aquasphere. So that part to me was new because I thought that they were something that I would have to worry about, but then it's not really anything you have to really truly worry about, especially because you could just move around to another room and then that takes care of that. So if you don't have a bot programmed to wipe out the octopods, it doesn't matter. Just move to the next room.
I think the rats in this game may be the crystals when you think about it, because that's the heavy restriction in this game. Because in order to move past the red line on the score track, you have to pay them, like I mentioned when we were first talking. And that's kind of the punishment in this game. Like, you might have a couple points subtracted for octopods here and there, but if you don't have any crystals and you do a lot of stuff to score points, and especially at the end of the round, you get the bonuses. For the majority, you get some other things for placing bots, the submarines, all that.
Yeah,
but if you don't have the crystal to pay the troll's toll, you'll get held back, and it's all for nothing if you don't have the crystals.
Yeah, but you can only hold 2 crystals unless you like upgrade
the lab expansion.
Which makes it's hard to upgrade because then you have to decide, do I want to upgrade or do I want to... There's also decisions. It's a very decision heavy game, and as it stands, I don't know what decision's best right now.
So I want to ask about player interaction in this game, because this has been a pretty big topic for us the last few games that we felt it was a little dull, for lack of a better term, where we were both just kind of doing our own thing, not having to pay attention to the other person. How would this contrast to experiences with those games?
Experiences with the first portion of our 10x10, I would say that this has heavy player interaction because you consistently moved my bots and sent them back to my board, making me basically lose points that I had worked so hard for. And then you really have to go like back and forth with one another when it comes to having, I forgot what you called it already, but basically the majority in the area of that room. But when it comes to moving up the map of programming your bots, that's not really like competitive because either one of us can go on either side or in the same area. So I would say that this isn't the most competitive game that we've played, but I do like the interaction that it has because it's fun. It's very chasing. Like, you're chasing each other.
I noticed that we were smack talking again in this one for the first time in a while. Like, ooh, I'm going to come in and take your octopods and get the points for it. I think with the track on the side of the board where you're selecting the actions, though, although it doesn't have direct player interaction, it forces you to, or it gives you a reason to watch what the other person's doing. And especially when you look on the board on where the scientists are, if you're moving up one side of the track and doing certain actions and we're in the same area of the board, that might be you chasing after the same things that I'm doing. So I might need to move to the other side of the board or go up the different side.
Yeah, that's true. Because, and that board in general is kind of hard because if you decide to go on the right or left path, you really don't get to cross back over after you make that choice. But it is a cool aspect that the choices rotate. So there's lots of like rotating aspects where maybe section A of the Aquasphere will have octopods for one round, but then all of a sudden section E is starting to build octopods, and like the randomizing of everything is a fun aspect of the game.
Yeah, it is. Every game has a little bit of random setup too. So also every game with the action selection board, the configuration will be a little bit different. All these cards that you use for it are double-sided, so the decisions will be a little bit different every game.
Yeah, so far I think that it's going to be an interesting 10 by 10.
Yeah, I think so. And Stefan Feld has only let me down once with In the Year of the Dragon. It wasn't even that bad. It just was okay. But playing his game designs just brings me back to a very familiar place. I feel comfortable here. This is like a comfort zone thing for me. And it's interesting. Just in one play of this, and having played a lot of his other designs, I can see some influence in his evolving style. I can't remember if it came out before or after this, but Luna is a game that kind of reminds me of this in terms of moving to certain places in the action selection. And then a later designed Carpe Diem where you're drafting tiles, but it kind of has this rondelle of moving around. This is almost like a rondelle when you think about it. So it's interesting, the more games I play of his, I can see how game A later evolved into other designs. And each game feels different, but they have similarities to where if you've played enough of them, like you said, you start to pick up on things and they're easy to learn. Like, a lot of people have described this as a heavy, complex game. And this kind of feels like one of the lighter games we've played in a little bit to me, but that's just because I am familiar with the style.
Yeah, and I just realized too, as I was staring at the board, is that usually when board games have multiple playing areas, I have been like intimidated by it, and I was thinking, why has this not intimidated me? And it's because it's colorful. So it's like really colorful, and it has all these cute pieces. So to me, it's just like, oh, it's so cute. I want to learn how to play it because the pieces are cute. These little gem things, I keep calling them coal, but I guess they're crystals.
Yeah.
Everything's very appealing color-wise. So it's not as intimidating as the game may seem, I guess.
It's enticing.
Yeah, it's very enticing.
Like I was mentioning the crop circle design. It's just something about it.
Mm-hmm. And there's something about going around in a circle, too, that is just very fun.
Me too.
Very, like, whimsical almost.
Yeah, you're just dancing around this board. The overall theme of this 10 by 10 challenge is kind of exploration or adventure, discovery, I guess. How well do you think I nailed it with this game, bringing it into the list?
Well, I haven't really discovered anything in this game, Dave. But I do feel that we're exploring and racing around to be the better scientist out of the other one. So
I think so.
Yeah, I would say the study, I guess the exploration, yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I said some games in the list were a stretch, and I saw this one as we're going underwater to explore the discoveries of, I mean, we have these octopods or the crystals. There's some mystery that we're tasked to research. So maybe that's where it comes into play. Oh,
we're gonna search for Megalodon down here, huh?
Yeah.
So I'm excited. I'm excited to continue playing these 9 rounds. Honestly, this game re-sparks my want to just play them all in one night.
I know. We could do it. The first round, even learning, was less than an hour. Yeah. And that's pretty good.
Yeah. And we had a few intermissions between then because we got like water and stuff like that. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, I like this game. I like this game so far a lot. And we'll see how that changes or flows by the end of the 10.
Yeah, we'll dive a little deeper. And it's the first time in a while, by the way, where you said, I like this game after first play. Usually you're like, I don't know. I really don't know on this. So
yeah, that's true.
Maybe that bodes well.
Yeah, so we'll find out. I mean, I lost this first game, but...
Yeah, you did, by a lot. So.
Okay. Well, well, we'll move into the 9 and see who wins, okay? Yes, we are back, finishing our 10 by 10 for Aquasphere. I'm coming into this all pumped up because I did lose our first round when I was unsure of what was going on. But then after examining the board, I was like, wait, this is exactly like a different game. And then it made it easier for me. It clicked and then boom, I won.
Not every round. Let's celebrate my wins too.
Okay. What was yours?
How many did I win?
Yeah. We could celebrate them. How many?
The first one I won by a lot. That was awesome.
I didn't understand the game at the time. Yeah.
And then I won 2 more games throughout the 10 rounds.
Throughout the round.
So 3.
What was the high scores? Let's celebrate those as well.
The high scores?
Yes, because somebody passed 100.
It was you. Your best score was 102. My best score was 86. Your average score was 79.6. Mine was 69.9. I got the lowest score of 53. This was the last round.
Yeah, it was the last round.
So ironically, it was my worst scoring round. I just basically played it 2 times in a row tonight.
Well, we didn't play it in a row. We went for a little walk.
That's true.
Yeah, a little clear your mind, But tell me, did you have a strategy at all?
Well, to try to win, try to stay alive, I did have strategy setting out each game because this game does allow you to focus in certain areas, I noticed. You can go for building your laboratory.
That's what I did.
You can go for grabbing these development cards or research cards, if you have the capacity to do so. You can go for octopods, going for a lot of those, or get all your submarines out. You went for the laboratory, and you accomplished that every time with those different letters that give you points. I really wanted the submarine strategy to work, where I got all of my submarines out. But the problem was that the submarines aren't really worth anything. I mean, they give you points when you place them out, but you also have to place the bots out on the board, but they keep getting kicked back if the area that they go, the holding area, when you kick the bot out of the control space into the holding area, and then if that gets full, then they get kicked back. Anyway, this whole cycle system of bots. And my board kept refilling with my bots, so it never got to the point where all the submarines that I put out would get me the points that they could have at the end of each round. Meanwhile, you were over here building your laboratory, and at the end of the game, you get points for all the letters that you have, and you got 21 points at the end of each game that we played that I remembered. So...
Well, what I did was when I looked at the player board, it shows you what the end points are. And I saw that the alphabet was the most points. So that's why I went for that, because not only is it the most points, but when you grab an alphabet letter into your laboratory, you get to put a bot on that letter.
Yeah, which gives you the control for the end of the round, and then gets more bots off your board.
And then, with that, while I was looking at the points at the end, the submarines, getting out all 6 just gives you 5 points, so that wasn't worth my time, seeing as it cost time to put a submarine out, and it started with 1, 2, 3, and 4, depending on if there was already submarines there. So you would be
expensive.
Yeah, you'd be wasting a lot of resources for very minimal return.
Yeah.
And that's why I decided to go the route of building the laboratory. And then I would chain that by getting one of these upgrades that allowed me to get a crystal depending on which one I went on. So that way I never had to get this crystal spot and waste one of my bots programming to get crystals when I could use all of my bots to get laboratory pieces.
I'm just imagining this conversation out of context, by the way. I love these research cards.
Yeah.
Anything that gives me ongoing abilities, but the problem is half the time I don't end up using them to the highest capacity that I could. The rounds that I did do really well are the ones where I got the research cards, And then I was able to use those to score a lot of points. Like there was one, I think every time you used a certain space on the engineering track, you would get 4 points. So I decided I'm going to go for that strategy of using that space all the time, each round. But then I got another card that comboed well with it, so it gave me points, and then it also gave me something else that was kind of tied into that. But I wanted to talk about the restrictive nature of this game, because we talked a lot about restrictions in games, and some games are maybe not as restrictive as others, some are maybe like too restrictive. But where do you think this one fell in terms of how it really caused you to think and strategize and plan everything out and feel like every turn really mattered?
So I feel this one wasn't as restrictive as Agricola, and it wasn't as non-restrictive as Boon Lake. It was just about as restrictive as Arnak.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Because there was nothing that I didn't want to do that I couldn't do, because even though everything always got mixed up, there was a way to do it. So my objective was to build my laboratory, and on the side you can only program one laboratory bot for each round, right? Because there's only one. But you can go to this colorful one, and then you can be in section B, and if you use that bot, you can program another green one. So I would get 2 green ones around. So I was very focused on my objective. So what happened was, with how we had 10 rounds and everything, if I started at C, sector C, I would try to get into sector F, A, B, because that would be the best way to use your resources, because F to A is 0 and A to B is 1 time. So you would only be using one of your times, and you get more times throughout every round depending on how many submarines you had put down. But if you stay in the section, it doesn't matter if you put submarines down, because you automatically get a sub down in the place that you start.
Are you a bot? This is wild.
Yeah, so then if I started in C, D, or E, I would make my way that way. This works the same if you do start over here in D, C, B, because you can get a upgrade to make the 2 a 0, so it would reflect the F, A, B. And then, with that, since B had the program for the green to upgrade my laboratory, I would make sure to always have 1 time. And then the programming side was set up where all of mine were at the top, and it really messed me up a little bit. And like the colorful one was at the top, the green one was at the top, and the blue one was at the top that I needed to get the crystal, because I had that upgrade that allowed me that anytime I landed on the submarine to program that I got a crystal. So what I did for that was I examined how I could program a submarine so that I could get a crystal, because there was no way I was getting a submarine because I was on the left side of the board as opposed to the right side of the board, and the right was there. So then my options were the colorful one and the green one. So with that, I looked at the board and looked at my resources and found that there was an upgrade that allowed me to program a submarine. So I used my resources, even though I didn't want to, because I really didn't want to end up back over at E, but I ended up at E so that I could get that to program the 2, so I would get 2 time back, and then I got to program the submarine. So then that took care of that. And then, when I went up, I chose to do this. Oh wait, no, I did something else with the submarine. I wanted the submarine for something else, not specifically for the crystal. I already went into that with 2 crystals. Then on the left side, I chose the colorful bot as opposed to the green bot, because if I chose the colorful one, that would have got rid of 2 bots off my board. And the majority of bots that you could really get off your board in a 2-player game is 11.
Wow. So, wait, was that everything in your...
No.
Okay,
so because I already figured that out, I decided there's no point in placing out more than 4 submarines. Because, A, most laboratories, unless you upgrade them, can only carry 4 clocks. Like 4 times.
Yeah.
So why continue upgrading your submarines unless you have the capacity? It's just a waste of a resource.
That's true.
So I decided not to do that, because you're wasting resources for points that make no sense when you can end up with 21 at the end. And then, after I completed my laboratory, because I would complete it early in the game, that's when I would do miscellaneous things that would just earn points. So like, that's when I would go for the octopods. Is that what they're called in this game? I would spend 3 of my time to program for something else, and I would do all of that. But when I spent 3 of my time, I would always program it for the colorful one, because that would allow me to use 2 of the programmed things. And then in that case, always knock you down, which is why most games ended with me having full control of the board. Yeah. It's like chess. I knew what I was going to do way in the beginning.
If you said it's like Monopoly, I would
Well, you even made a comment when you were like, oh, geez, you're playing like chess, because every time you went to program, I just went, I just moved it. Because I already knew what I was going to do this whole game.
So I want to talk about... So, definition of restriction, because what you're describing to me sounds like a restrictive game.
Oh.
Because when I think of Arnak, and what that experience was like for me, I could just make decisions in that game and not really have to think that far ahead, because no matter what decision I made, I could work with whatever I did and figure out a way to get resources and stuff. You could a little bit in this game. There were some times where I just made a decision and I was like, I'll figure it out. But sometimes that worked out, sometimes it didn't. There were a few games where I made decisions too quick and I cornered myself in a situation where I didn't have the resources to do what I wanted. I couldn't move because I didn't have time, and ended up wasting actions. And in this game, if you waste an action, you could very well lose the game. And so when I think of restrictive, to me, it's a game where you feel like at the end, every decision that you made truly mattered. And you really do have to think through at the beginning of each round how you're going to approach that. And looking at the engineering track and the different ways that you can go and the order and the actions that you can do forces you to have to plan ahead and use your resources wisely. And they feel pretty tight in this game because you always, at least I, at the end of each round, almost always ended with no time. I was always scraping by when it came to these crystals. I didn't want to end in the space for the octopods that would give you negative points. And so it felt just restrictive enough to me. I would argue definitely more than Arnak, but Agricola, maybe not, but not too far off. I would say this is definitely more restrictive than other Stefan Feld games that I have played. So think like Notre Dame, Bruges, Castles of Burgundy. Those games had restrictions in them in terms of you couldn't do necessarily everything that you wanted. And in Bruges especially, there were the threat markers, which the octopods are kind of like the threat markers. They don't take resources away from you, but they do take points away at the end of the round and cause you to have to think of where you want to place your bots in order to avoid negative points. But all I'm trying to say is every decision you make has a lot within it. Not only where will that make you end up with resources, what resources do you have to spend, what kind of points will you get out of that action, but then also where you're placing your bots in terms of gaining control of the entire board, because at the end of each round, having majority gives you 6 points. And if you don't get majority most of the game, that's another thing that will completely lose you the game. There was the one round, the last round that I did win, you and I tied every single round, and that's how I was able to win. But the ones where you won, you got majority at least half the time.
Well, I also got -5 points in that.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for rubbing that in.
But yeah, I guess I see that. But the way I took majority of the other side of the board was with building the factory. So I would pick letters that I couldn't reach on the other side of the board that would cost me resources to walk over there. So I optimized the letters that were available in the randomization.
Yeah, maybe this is not necessarily, if you were to go off of your definition, maybe not restrictive heavy game, but an optimization game. You really have to optimize every turn and think ahead.
Yeah, that sounds right. Because, I don't know, I guess when I think of restrictive, I think of where you have to have something at the end of the round. So, Agricola and Le Havre, you have to pay your workers, you have to feed them. And to me, that's restrictive because I always have to keep items in the back end to make sure that I can feed them. Or like Cooper's Island. Yeah. That was restrictive because we had to make sure that we had food as well.
But you have to have crystals in this game in order to move past the red line. Otherwise, you could end up not losing points, but not gaining them, which is just as bad.
See, I guess I didn't think of it as being just as bad because I was already like, well, I have 21 points. He's going to have to catch up 21 points. And that's how I thought of it. So if I ever got stuck, I was just like, oh, okay, that's fine. I'll get it next round. This one, I think, just really worked with my brain because it had a circle and I was chasing you. And because I was chasing you, my, like, animal instinct kicks in. You know, my pupils widen. I get excited. And I'm like, and then I chase you around the board, and everywhere you go, I'm just like...
This is definitely a more interactive game than the last few that we've played.
Yes.
We felt that after one play, and it even more so after 10.
Yeah, and this game went pretty quick for us, too.
Yeah, about 30 minutes. So it was the same as like Notre Dame or Bruges. Those are pretty quick too.
Mm-hmm. I liked it. I really did feel very chess-like because it was like knocking your pieces down, like taking your pawns.
Exactly.
Just scholars, mate. Yeah.
Do you feel like the design style felt similar to the other Stefan Feld games that we've played?
It does seem that he likes shapes.
Like geometric shapes?
Yeah, like geometric shapes. Like he finds ways to make those work so that his board isn't just like a square, and I think that's pretty neat.
True.
Not a square, a rectangle. But all of his games tend to be really interactive in a way. Like, you know.
I could definitely see the people call his game point salad games. There are a lot of different ways you can score points. Maybe not as many as a game like Castles of Burgundy, but kind of close. And I know people criticize the point salad style. Oh, you can just do anything and get points. But what I like about that style of design is, although there are many ways that you can get points, not all of them will score the same. And you almost have, it gives you this buffet menu of things that you can do in order to chase points. And it's up to you to decide which route is most optimal. And I think this game definitely does that.
Yeah, I think so. Because the submarines and these like upgrade ones, they give you that upfront hit of points.
Yeah,
so
that feels so good.
You, some people who like that upfront will go for those, and that's literally what you went for. And people who like the long game, like me, and are patient waiting, will go for the other points. And
True.
I think that this game definitely highlighted our two gaming styles, where you're more the upfront points and I'm more the back end, because it's the same for that one game that you really liked, Castles of Burgundy.
Yes.
Like the front end, you were going hard on all the points, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna lose already. But then I was building something bigger, like all these, and then by the end of the game, I was like, oh, okay, I'm cool. And then within our 10 by 10, I was just like, yeah, Dave's gonna get his points up front, but I got him.
We'll wait and see. I will say the one thing that we got wrong, the center tile where it tells you how many points you get for placing submarines or getting the research cards, actually starts lower and gets higher each round. I think I said in the beginning, our first round, that it starts with 5 points and then goes lower and lower with each round. So it's the opposite of a game like Castles of Burgundy, where as the game progresses, you get more points for submarines and these cards, because when you think about it,
it gets harder.
Well, it gets harder to do, but also you're not going to be able to use the benefits of those as much. Like, if you get one of these research cards on the first round, you have 4 full rounds of using its benefit. But if you get on the last round, you're probably not going to be able to use its benefit, so it's just worth the points. So I thought that made sense. I think in comparison to his other designs, like this one, honestly, I didn't really have many expectations, because the reviews I've heard on this one over the years have been hit or miss. But I can definitely appreciate this design style, and I think this is an underrated game that I don't think you can get it new in print anymore, but you can find used copies online at really inexpensive prices, and I would recommend checking this out as an under-the-radar Stefan Feld game.
Yeah, I would say so. I really liked this game. Honestly, for this 10 by 10, so far this one's on my number 1.
I could see that as we were playing it. It just fit into your thought process, your thinking style, your AI brain, your programming your bots.
Honestly, I think this
felt unique.
Yeah, this is the first episode where I'm like, all right, let's go. And then I explained it. I don't think we've had a previous episode that has really talked about my thought process.
Yeah, that went pretty in depth. I have a whole shelf. It includes Civolution, Bora Bora, Amerigo. We've got Trajan, my favorite game of all time that we have yet to play.
Is it your favorite game? Because you were like, Castles of Burgundy is my favorite game.
I didn't say it was my favorite game of all time. I said it was the game I'd played the most, that I thought I was best at.
And then I came.
Trajan is like Slot Machine, the board game. If you want those dopamine hits of constant points.
So it's definitely a Dave.
It's a Dave game.
It's a Dave game.
It's so good. I can't wait to show you that one. But so is this a keep it to play or trade it away?
It is a keep it to play.
Yes. So excited. Well, that was...
Me too.
I had a lot of fun with this. So thank you for taking the journey with me.
Yes. And thank you for listening to us this week. Be sure to join us next week. We are on Patreon, so our Patreon is Dice Jesters. There you can find some behind-the-scenes items, as well as another podcast esque episode where we kind of discuss our lives outside of board games and just kind of what's going on with us. And of course, Lupin. We still talk about Lulumans. You can also see him on our Instagram. Our Instagram is Dice Jesters. If you would like to email us about a game at all, feel free to email thedicejesters@gmail.com. As always, I'm going to do a throwback to Dave. Play games with the ones you love.